Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we are taking a fascinating, magnifying glass look at a situation that plays out in corporate offices, boardrooms, and Zoom calls literally all over the world. We're talking about the public apology. But we aren't just looking at any run-of-the-mill apology today. We are deconstructing a highly manipulative corporate apology using a real-time case study of some seriously intense office drama. We're going to look at a scenario where an apology sounded absolutely 100% perfect, and that, right there, was exactly the problem. This explainer is going to completely break down the anatomy of a failed apology. We are going to isolate the exact moment when a confession stops being about accountability and suddenly turns into a calculated tool for narrative control. Because let's be real, if you have ever sat through a company town hall or read a carefully drafted PR statement and thought to yourself, something about this just feels off, well, this explainer is going to show you exactly what that off feeling is, and more importantly, how to spot it a mile away.
So I want you to set your mental scene here for a second. Imagine an executive, we'll call him Ethan Brooks. He's a former rising star who essentially built his entire corporate image by taking credit for other people's work and hiding behind dense, confusing corporate jargon. Right now, he's sitting completely alone in one of those cold, glass-walled conference rooms rehearsing an apology. And this brings us to a profound truth we really have to understand. Some apologies are written to heal, others are written to survive. If you were to look over Ethan's shoulder at his laptop in this scenario, he doesn't just have one apology drafted, no way. He has 3 entirely different versions open on his screen, and each one is meticulously optimized for a completely different audience. He's tweaking the words like regret, pressure, mistakes, learning, but he's calibrating them. And he's not calibrating them for the truth, he's calibrating them for maximum self-preservation. He's choosing his words so incredibly carefully because he knows, deep down, that every single sentence he says might eventually become evidence. This is our first major red flag, folks. An apology that is genuinely meant to heal requires vulnerable, uncomfortable honesty. But an apology meant to survive, that just requires calculated optics.
Now, before Ethan actually goes public with this, he attempts a classic corporate maneuver. We've all seen this one. The quiet settlement. He approaches a colleague named Maya Carter. Now, Maya is a strategy lead, and she is the person who is directly, measurably harmed by Ethan's stolen credit and his fake KPI reports. Ethan asks her for a private conversation. He basically wants to apologize to her first, safely behind closed doors to smooth things over. But Maya absolutely refuses, and her response perfectly captures our next core concept. Private regret does not repair public harm. It's such a brilliant realization. Maya instantly recognizes that Ethan just wants a private absolution so he doesn't have to face the music in public. But she demands that he apologize exactly where he damaged her, out in the open, in front of the exact same people who watched his lies work in the first place. This is an absolutely crucial lesson for anyone trying to navigate toxic office politics. When someone publicly damages your reputation or takes public credit for your long hours, a hushed, "Hey, my bad, I'm sorry," in a random hallway just doesn't fix the systemic damage. It doesn't work. True accountability must always match the radius of the harm.
Section 1. The public pivot. Managing guilt versus taking accountability.
Okay, so Ethan finally stands before the room for this big town hall. And honestly, he actually starts out really strong. He looks at everyone and says, "I let ambition choose my ethics for me." Wow. That is a powerful, heavy sentence. And for a brief moment, you can feel the tension in the room just soften. The audience genuinely wants to believe that change is possible. As humans, people generally want to forgive when they hear what sounds like genuine accountability. But then, almost seamlessly, the pivot happens. Right before their eyes, he shifts his strategy. He stops talking about what he did, and he starts talking about the immense pressure he was under. He starts talking about intense, overbearing leadership expectations. He even brings up his own deep personal fear of being replaceable. Do you see what just happened there? It's subtle, but it's massive. He took the blinding spotlight off the people he actually hurt, and he swiveled it around to shine directly on his own anxiety. In the span of about 30 seconds, he transformed himself from the perpetrator of the problem into a helpless victim of his environment. He completely stopped taking accountability, and he started actively asking the room for sympathy.
And that brings us to a psychological tactic that is just vital to understand if you work in any corporate space. It's called confession as control. This is the act of using an apology to manage an audience's emotions, essentially shifting the focus away from the victim's harm and onto the perpetrator's guilt. When Ethan pivots to talking about his own fears and workplace pressures, Maya's face doesn't harden in anger, it simply goes completely still. She instantly recognizes this old, tired pattern. She realizes in that exact crystal-clear moment, he is not actually apologizing to them. Not really. He is asking the entire room to manage his guilt for him.
He is literally weaponizing his confession to control the narrative, forcing the audience to comfort him rather than hold his feet to the fire. It is a masterful, deeply manipulative sleight of hand. When you see this happening in your own workplace, when the person apologizing suddenly becomes the person needing a hug, alarm bells should be ringing incredibly loudly in your head.
Section 2. The omitted evidence. The truth is in the drafts.
Now, this is the part of the story where the quiet background players suddenly become the heroes. Enter Nina. Nina is an executive assistant, and her careful, meticulous record-keeping turns quiet background details into undeniable smoking gun evidence. Working alongside Jordan Price, an IT audit specialist who tracks digital footprints, Nina uncovers something truly fascinating. They find a deleted sentence from one of Ethan's drafts. The sentence reads, "I knowingly used access I should not have had." Just look at that for a second. This is a highly specific, standalone sentence. It outright admits to a deliberate, mechanical breach of protocol. It is an undeniable, black-and-white admission of guilt. But here's the kicker. This exact sentence was completely deleted from Ethan's final, polished apology. In his final speech, he just said he made mistakes. He deliberately, consciously erased the specific sentence admitting exactly how he made those mistakes.
So the crucial point here is summarized perfectly by Nina's sharp observation. The truth was in draft 2. Why does this matter so much for us as focused learners trying to analyze corporate behavior? Because true accountability requires admitting to the specific actions taken, not just expressing a vague, sweeping sense of regret. Vague regret is completely safe. Vague regret says, "I'm so sorry if anyone felt hurt by my actions." But admitting I knowingly used access I should not have had is entirely different. That is a documented compliance violation. That's a fireable offense. By deleting that specific line, the room gets to hear the stark difference between expressing emotional regret and actually taking professional accountability. Ethan wanted all the social credit for apologizing without carrying an ounce of the actual liability for what he really did.
Section 3. The client fallout. Beyond the office walls.
This is the moment where Daniel, who was actually the client in this scenario, steps into the spotlight. And this brilliantly illustrates a terrifying corporate concept known as exported risk. This happens when an individual's unethical actions or false promises end up creating unmanaged liabilities and lost time for clients or external partners. So Daniel literally stands up in the middle of this town hall and delivers an absolutely devastating blow to Ethan's carefully managed apology. Daniel looks at him and says, "You did not just take credit, you exported risk." Think about the massive cascading effects of workplace deception here. Ethan lied internally on his KPI reports just to make his own performance look good. But externally, out in the real world, Daniel's team took those false reports as gospel, planned their entire quarter around those totally fake promises, and ended up losing months of real work and hard resources. An apology that skips over the external client harm is completely and utterly incomplete. The damage wasn't just about hurting Maya's feelings in the office. It included everyone outside the building who trusted the company's data.
Section 4. Accountability over remorse. When HR finally steps up.
Enter Linda Park, the HR manager. Now, look, we all know that in many corporate environments, HR is sometimes seen as a bit of a fog machine. They can be a corporate shield designed to protect executives from scandal, usually preferring quiet, NDA-laced settlements to loud, messy truths. But this right here is Linda's turning point. The evidence Nina and Jordan found is simply too overwhelming. The client has spoken out publicly. The digital footprint has been exposed for everyone to see. So Linda completely stops being a corporate shield, and she steps fully into the role of a strict, unbending compliance officer. She declares to the room, "Remorse is not a corrective action plan." I really want you to let that sink in for a second. This is a massive takeaway for anyone watching who is in management or leadership. In a professional setting, a tearful apology, a heavy display of guilt, or a profoundly articulate statement of remorse can never, ever replace a concrete consequence. Emotion is not compliance, period.
So what does an actual corrective action plan look like in reality? Well, Linda immediately outlines these tangible, undeniable steps. Step 1, record the findings officially. No more quiet hallway chats to sweep things under the rug. This goes on the permanent official record. Step 2, notify the affected teams. Radical transparency completely replaces the cover-up. And step 3, which is honestly the most impactful of all, reopen personnel decisions tied to the false data. Think about what that means. If Ethan got a promotion or a bonus based on stolen credit, or if someone else, like Maya, was passed over because of Ethan's fake KPIs, every single one of those decisions must be reversed and audited. By executing these 3 very specific steps, Linda completely changes the gravity of the environment. She violently shifts the narrative away from Ethan's emotional manipulation and grounds it entirely in cold, hard corporate compliance.
Section 5. The system versus the individual. Ethan's last defense.
Up against the wall, in his very last desperate defense for survival, Ethan attempts to deflect the blame entirely. He basically claims that he is being made into a scapegoat. He says he's being painted as the only villain in a corporate culture that actively rewards this exact kind of aggressive, cutthroat behavior. His argument boils down to, the system made me do it, I just played the game. But Maya is having none of it. She delivers this brilliant, show-stopping counter-argument right back at him. A broken system gave you doors, you still walked through them. Wow. This perfectly encapsulates the eternal tension between systemic pressure and personal responsibility. Yes, absolutely, the corporate culture might be unbelievably toxic. Yes, the board executives might value shiny optics way more than the actual truth. The system might have totally enabled his bad behavior. But systemic pressure does not erase personal choice. Enabling a behavior does not erase a person's agency. No matter how many doors a broken system opens for you, you are still the one who actively chooses to step across the threshold.
Section 6. The final lesson. What we learn from late apologies.
In the end, Ethan's apology was ultimately too late and way too over-engineered to actually save his job. He was out. But interestingly enough, it was highly successful in one very specific area. It forced the truth into the glaring light and completely cleared the official record for everyone else. And that brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explanator today. Listen to what an apology avoids, because that is where the truth usually stands. When you're out there evaluating workplace behavior, when you're reading a perfectly crafted press release, or when a colleague is trying to casually explain away a major error at your desk, do not just blindly listen to the words they are saying. You need to pay intense, laser-focused attention to the missing information. Look for the deleted draft too. Notice if they are suddenly asking you to manage their guilt instead of addressing the actual harm they just caused. The silence, the omissions, and those subtle conversational pivots, that is your real data. That is where the story actually lives. So, I want to leave you with this. When the narrative is being manipulated around you, how are you documenting the truth in your own workplace? Seriously, think about it. Are you just relying on your memory and some private, off-the-record conversations? Or are you acting more like Nina and Jordan, keeping the careful records and tracking the digital footprints that turn quiet background details into undeniable evidence? Surviving complex corporate politics without losing your sanity or your integrity doesn't just require a good moral compass. It requires a highly analytical eye and a really solid paper trail. Keep this entire case study in your back pocket for the next time you hear a corporate apology that sounds just a little too perfect. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me today. It's been great. Keep learning, keep observing the room, and always look for the truth in the drafts. Catch you next time.